You found the skeleton. How would you tell people that this is you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey there YouTube, the Dapper Dinosaur back again for another look at Cindy Lincoln's recorded tours of the science building at Dinosaur Adventureland. Last time we saw that the evidence of human evolution isn't as flimsy as Kent would like us all to believe, and we're going to continue with that for this episode, the final episode of Helping Cindy Lincoln. I just want to remind you to please like this video and leave a comment when you finish watching it to let me know what you thought. Also, if you're not subscribed, please take a second to hit that subscribe button just below this video, and remember to use the bell to turn on notifications, so you're always notified when there's new Dapper Dino content. Without further ado, here's Cindy.
Now, if you don't buy this, and if you start to think about what you're being taught, you'll realize that even in subtle places, there's the implication that ancient man was dumber.
Well, not ancient Homo sapiens, but given that human ancestors had less sophisticated technology, hugely lower levels of innovation, and smaller brains, when you get to other species of hominin ancestral to Homo sapiens, that's not an inaccurate characterization.
They were cavemen or didn't have technology.
Well, we know they didn't always live in caves, but we know some of them did, and it's certainly not the consensus view that they didn't have technology. There are literally billions of ancient stone tools in Africa showing that they very much did have technology. In fact, we now know that some troops of chimpanzees have technology, and even a crude but real archaeological record.
However, they are finding more and more examples of ancient man having high technology, like more than we have.
Remember, just like with the Ica stones, we're going to need provenance. But if we have that, then I'm absolutely here for lost advanced tech. That sounds cool.
In a biblical worldview, Adam came directly from the hand of God. He would have been a genius. Now think about when you have your children. You try to have your children inherit all your wisdom. You teach them everything you can. How much do they receive? And how much do they reject? Okay, so I would submit to you that every generation loses a little bit of wisdom.
Most wisdom that you miss out on from your parents can be gained through life experience. And in fact, I know for my parents that's a lot of the wisdom they passed on to me. I also don't know how we measure wisdom to tell if it's going up or down. But I will say that the rapid pace of technological innovation we are currently experiencing says to me that humans are not getting dumber. I don't think they're necessarily becoming more intelligent in any significant way, but the overall trend does not seem to be towards significantly lower intelligence.
Now think about something as simple as the pyramids. We do not know how ancient man made those.
Well, we don't know for sure exactly what techniques were used, but we know that the technology was sufficient. Technologies like internal ramps, wooden sleds, and copper chisels, drills, and saws. All of that together is more than enough technology to make a pyramid like the ones in Egypt.
Right there proves to you ancient man was more advanced than us, not cavemen.
Well, nothing about the Bronze Age stonework means that ancient man was more advanced than modern man, quite the opposite. But on the other hand, that's just technological. There was no real biological difference between the humans who built the pyramids and the humans around today. They weren't stupid at all, but when we're talking about human ancestry, that goes beyond Homo sapiens and back to other species. We're not talking about the pyramids. The pyramids weren't built by Australopithecines, or even by early members of Homo like Homo erectus. So I'll agree that the humans who made the great cities of the Bronze Age, and even earlier, were not in any way less intelligent on average than current humans. That doesn't really say anything about Homo ergaster, etc.
Okay, let's go back over here. This is an example. We have seen a lot of the Ica stones. Remember we saw those with dinosaurs eating people? Well, the Ica stones actually show ancient man performing heart surgery, brain surgery, a C-section, and using telescopes.
Well, there's no reason to think that Ica stones are real, but they also show aliens, yet creationists tend not to believe in aliens. So if we can't trust the stones on aliens, why should we trust them on surgery? Further, their depictions of dinosaurs are wildly inaccurate, so even if they were authentic artifacts, the best explanation still wouldn't be that they depict dinosaurs that the artists saw themselves. At this point, Cindi gives examples from Ica stones. Since we don't have any good reason to believe that Ica stones are authentic artifacts, I don't really feel like addressing the claims individually.
They knew how to use telescopes, which makes total sense when you just think about the Mayan pyramids. They were lined up with the stars. They knew more about the stars probably than you and me.
Well, at least the people whose job it was to keep track of the seasons, which is pretty important for an agricultural society, probably knew more about them than most people do. At least in the sense of they know where more stars are by heart, and when in a year you should see what stars and where. But there is no evidence of telescopes before the Renaissance. Instead, people used tools like sextants to measure the locations of stars above the horizon, a technique which is still used in navigation when relying on star charts.
Okay, so for some reason, the powers that be want us to not know that. They want us to think that we are animals.
But even if everything Cindi just said about ancient architecture, medicine, and astronomy were true, it wouldn't make humans not animals, because they still meet the definition in biology for animals.
So they had done all these so-called evidences for ape men. I would submit to you that every single one of them is either an ape or a man.
I would suggest that they are all apes, since humans are apes, but that I would need a good definition of man in order to figure out which, if any, of the presented skulls were human.
Let me remind you of a couple of things. Have you ever seen old men? Their eyebrows get big and bushy, and their ears get kind of bigger. My girlfriend had this joke. She used to get so annoyed when we would get behind a slow driver. And she'd say, "Oh, there's the big ears. It's an old guy on a Sunday drive. We're passing him." So when you get old, your ears and your brows get bigger.
Right, so the hair on the eyebrows gets bushy, and the soft tissues of the ears keep growing, none of which is skeletal, so it won't show up in a fossil skull.
Do you remember some of the skulls? They're trying to get us to think that we used to be an ape. They have the brow ridge that's pronounced. Could it be that when man used to live to be old, remember we learned about this in day 2? If man used to be 900, do you think he would have had a brow ridge?
No, because brow ridges don't grow with old age. That's not what happens when someone has bushy eyebrows. That's just long hair. Long hair can occur over any shape of bone.
Yeah. Okay. So again, if you find a skull with a big brow, or even a skull that he's crooked over like that, that doesn't mean he's a monkey. Maybe he had arthritis. He was old.
Well, a few things. We can use tooth wear as a proxy for age, and many of the skulls we have of human ancestors are not old, as seen by relatively unworn teeth. We actually don't really find stooped over hominins. It seems that the transition to upright walking started very early, so that's a non-issue. Lastly, how does this idea of the skulls being those of normal but extremely elderly people fit in with their smaller brain case sizes? People's brain cases don't shrink as they age, as far as I know.
Okay. Now this is a very interesting book called Buried Alive by Jack Quazzo. He was a dentist. Sorry, he might be still alive. Is a dentist. And he wanted to go to Europe and actually see these skulls. Okay? He went to Neanderthal Valley to see the Neanderthal skulls. And he discovered that the museums were actually putting the jawbone in a different place. Okay, he knew as a dentist where this joint is. And he could tell that they were purposely placing it at a different spot to make it look more like an ape. He noticed it at all the museums. That's quite a coincidence. He approached people about it, and guess what? They actually tried to kill him. They followed him around Europe, tried to kill him. This is his story, if you'd like to read it.
Well, I don't know Dr. Quazzo, but his story seems false for a few reasons. First of which is simply that Neanderthals aren't thought to be the ancestors of modern humans, so there is no reason to make them seem more primitive to fit them into the story of human ancestry from other apes. Second, museum displays are not where the science is done. That's in literature. So an incorrect display doesn't really do anything to the science. Third, museums are not really staffed with assassins. They're usually operating on razor-thin margins, and even when people destroy invaluable art, artifacts, or fossils, it's rare that anything more than being asked to leave happens. Fourth, why did Dr. Quazzo go visit all of the museums when, at least according to the summary we just heard, his intention was to go see the skulls in Neander Valley? Which presumably means he wanted to see in situ skulls, not museum displays. Fifth, even if this is all true, since it doesn't involve any of the organisms in the ancestry of Homo sapiens, it doesn't really matter to the science of human evolution.
This is another book giving all the details that we had talked about earlier about the Hall of Shame, and how all the bones found that are supposedly ape men are actually either ape or man.
Okay, well, a friend of mine, Gutsa Gibbon, is quite familiar with this book and has covered its topics extensively, so check the link above for her channel and take a look at that stuff, because she does a much better job than I ever could.
One of the reasons they want us to think we're animals is because it's easier to kill animals.
I mean, I've killed some animals, but there are a lot of animals I'm not sure I could kill, especially not in a fair fight. Like, I'd take a pass on fisticuffs with an elephant. And yes, an elephant is bigger than a Ceratosaurus. I'm not as big as people think.
Okay, this is getting pretty hairy here, but you know that the majority of the population is pro-choice.
Not quite. From what I can tell from Gallup, pro-choice is more common than pro-life, but neither has broken 50% of the US population since 2018. But that's not terribly important, I suspect.
They believe that the population of the planet is a big problem, and that they want to eliminate especially unwanted babies. That way you can be free to have sex with anybody you want to with no responsibility of a child.
That's more antinatalism than the typical pro-choice position. Most pro-choice people base their stance on things like bodily autonomy of women and reproductive rights, rather than on ideas of overpopulation.
So, these drawings here are done by Ernst Haeckel, and he's trying to tell us that inside the womb, the baby looks like a fish baby, and a salamander baby, and a turtle baby, and that they all look the same. And that in the womb, the human baby recapitulates its evolutionary history. Now, he was convicted of fraud, and he actually admitted that these are drawings, not photos. He made them up. He didn't even try and make them look like the real thing.
Haeckel was never convicted of fraud. There is, as far as I can tell, not even a record of a trial for such. He did admit that a few of his drawings were done without referent, because, as he stated, at that stage and with his technology, no one could tell the difference between the embryo that he was actually drawing and one of the species he used as a label. He was correct about this. He did not need to admit that these were not photographs, because photography wasn't really a thing at the time. He certainly did make them look like the real thing, and unlike the bottom row of pictures we were shown, he explicitly removed yolk and maternal tissue and oriented the embryos all the same way for ease of comparison. Now, Haeckel was wrong about his capitulation theory, and now the science of evolutionary and developmental biology, or Evo-Devo, doesn't really operate under Haeckel's ideas, owing more to another man, Carl Ernst von Baer.
Down here we see the actual photos of the real thing. Fish embryo, salamander embryo, turtle embryo, chicken, rabbit. That does not look like a human embryo to me, but that's what it says there.
And here's what those pictures would look like if we follow the rules that Haeckel used to remove maternal tissue and orient them all the same way. Not so different looking, or so different from the original pictures. Now, I'm not arguing that people should still be using Haeckel. They shouldn't. We have high-res photographs now, and his ideas about the development of animals is quite off. But we need to be fair to him, especially since he can no longer defend himself.
This is actually a real human embryo, 12 weeks in the womb. It's obviously a human child.
I agree, it is obviously a human child, and I think that one of the worst pro-choice arguments out there is that a fetus isn't alive or isn't human. It's obviously both, and we can't have a reasonable discussion about the topic without starting from a point of understanding the basic facts of the matter. Now, I'm not going to have that full discussion on this channel, because this channel is about science and not social issues or political issues, but yes, Cindi is correct about that being a human.
And again, even if they were similar, it wouldn't mean they were evolved. It means they've got a common function, okay? They're trying to say if we have similar arm bones, that means we evolved one from another common ancestor. Well, actually, no. It means we all need arms. We live in the world. We have to be able to pick things up. We have to be able to eat. common function, not common ancestor.
Okay, I really like this because it provides us with a testable hypothesis. So when a designer designs something for a particular purpose, they can grab things from unrelated designs that work well. This happens a lot in computer coding. There are whole websites dedicated to people uploading code that others can download so that they can just take that code and plug it into their program. A lot of game development works that way. On the other hand, for different uses, there is no reason to reuse old designs. You can start from scratch. So if life is designed by a common designer, we should expect organs with the same function to have the same underlying anatomy, and those with different functions to have different design. Well, Cindi was talking about arms and using them to grab food. Let's look at arms used to get food. We'll take a look at the human arm, a mantis arm, and an octopus arm. One has a series of internal bones and muscles that pull on the bones. Another has an external skeleton with muscles and hydrostatic pressure. Another has no skeletons and just rings of muscle. So this does not support the hypothesis of a common designer. But let's look at some very different forelimbs. Here's the foreleg of a dog, the arm of a human, a whale flipper, and the wing of a pterosaur. Now, according to the design hypothesis, since these all have different function, there is no reason for them to have a similar underlying anatomy. Yet they all have the same bones in the same order, but with different functions. So on both ends, the design hypothesis is falsified. But these odd patterns of similar form, different function, and different form, same function is predicted by evolution. At this point, Cindi starts talking about the leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, and I'm just going to say this, even if her claims are true, that he were an ardent believer in evolution, and it inspired his ideas and crimes, that doesn't make evolution any more true or false. So that's all I'll address.
Okay, and then this is an actual human skeleton. The reason I have it here is because it shows red, yellow, black, or white. We all have the same skeleton. We are all human. The Lord made each of us with a soul. Animals don't have souls. They don't stand before God and give account for their life.
I'm not going to dispute whether souls exist and whether there's a final judgment. That's not what this channel is for. But I'll repeat something from the Bible. Ecclesiastes 3:18 and 19.
I said in mine heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them. As the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that man hath no preeminence above the beast, for all is vanity.
So even biblically, we know that humans are animals. Now, I'm perfectly happy to grant that humans are unique, but being unique among a group doesn't make you not part of the group. For example, let's say you had a sports team, say basketball. All the players but one are over 6 feet tall, and that one other player is 4'6". That player is unique, but he's still on the team. That's the last argument. From there, it's an invitation to come to Dinosaur Adventureland and Kent doing a demonstration about human perception using a kid on a spinning chair. I feel no need to address any of that. Well, with that, we're done looking at this particular tour. I really hope that Miss Lincoln sees this and realizes that I'm not here to antagonize her. My goal is to help her get completely out from under Kent's influence. Now, I want to remind everyone watching this that you absolutely should not be anything but kind to Cindi Lincoln. She's Kent's victim and deserves our sympathy and help, not any mockery or vitriol. Overall, I hope you enjoyed this series. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur. I just want to take a second to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 and above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovend, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Res Instance. My channel members and patrons help make this channel possible, and without their support, this channel really wouldn't exist. If you would like to help support the channel as a member or patron, there are links in the description to both join the channel as well as join the Patreon. Patrons and members get mentioned in these credit scenes, as well as getting early access to my scripted videos, and if you pledge $10 or above, you can also get access to various 3D assets that I create for Blender, both for use in the channel, as well as just general giveaways to my supporters to help in any Blender projects they might have. If a monthly or annual pledge isn't for you, then there is also a merch store linked in the description. And if none of that's right for you, please just like and subscribe because every like and subscription really helps the video out. Thank you.